What? Did you drag me out of the pocket dimension?
Yes. Now quit being a pussy and go find people to help you not get killed by Bane. Or Satan. Or both.
Wait, how do you even know about—
Shut it. Move.
I swear, you are the worst guardian robot spirit thing. Wait, what the hell was that?
I don't see anything.
Well, I do. It almost looks like— Wait. Don't tell me. It's—
Meet these eye, the Chrome from the Fire Emblem.
Who the fuck was that?
I have no idea, but what are you even doing here? Weren't you, like, haunting that theme park or something?
No, that's stupid. Why would I haunt a theme park?
Then—
I was on spring break. Oh yeah, baby. Show me all them astral titties. Ooh.
Cutaway gags? Really? What are we, Family Guy?
Shut up, Meg.
Shut the fuck up, I am here to take my vengeance upon you.
Like how?
I'm making you do a commentary
That's like the worst revenge.
on a wrestling video.
Oh, fuck! Get down!
Hashtag RimBatVidicon 2016.
Wait, you said this was a wrestling video, right?
That's correct.
Vetoed! Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Mr. the Fanboy. Yes, that is his real username.
He made a rant on professional wrestling that's about as inept as the Great Khali trying to execute a springboard shooting star press.
Huh. Not the imagery I would have gone with, but, sure.
Shut up, you fag. Commence the shitmongering.
People, you don't know how angry I am right now.
Not to cut you off, but this is a beautiful massacre of the art of cinematography that makes my intro to Boon Canon 19 look like Citizen fucking Kane.
Is that the May 19th storyline or the one where he teams up with Daniel Bryan?
No, the movie. The movie Citizen Kane.
I thought it was called See No Evil.
Fucking... Anyway, first of all, no, we have no idea how angry you are right now. Now, if you were to, I don't know, show us some of this anger, then that would be something. Second, your webcam, because that's clearly a webcam, is worse than mine. Don't believe me? Here's some footage from a review I did on my webcam. You may have noticed something else about my framing in one of my shittiest videos of all time. My face is near the middle of the frame, since nothing else in the shot is important. Your face, on the other hand, is way off to the side. Now, it'd be one thing if you were editing in some sort of visual evidence to back up what you're saying, but you're not doing that, are you? In fact, as my audience will likely notice, you're not editing at all, as indicated by the fact that we start on purple screen. How the fuck do you even get your camera to do that? No, that's a legitimate question. I may want to use it for stylistic purposes in the future to creep people out. Halloween's getting pretty close, you know.
Oh, that Citizen Kane. Sorry, my circuits, they kind of crossed for a minute there.
With the news I've just read that according to WrestleZone's Justin LaBar, WWE has just bought and acquired TNA's library. Not the promotion, but their library.
So here's the thing about what you just said. It was reported by one single correspondent for one website. If you know anything about wrestling, you know that this doesn't mean that it's true. More importantly, let's take a look at what's happened since then. Almost every news site in professional wrestling has since debunked this statement, including the YouTube channel WrestleTalk. You know what day that video was uploaded on? October 6th. You know what day Fanboy and Chum Chum's video was uploaded on? October 6th. That date is going to be important for this video, as it will be the cutoff date for any information I use to debunk Fanboy's points. Oh, and of course, WrestleTalk's video will be in the description.
Billy Corgan sold it to him, and now has ownership of TNA and plans to rebrand TNA.
I'm sorry, but what's with the repetition? You repeat yourself so much that I could put up a counter for every time you repeat the exact same phrase immediately after you already said it.
Please don't.
too much editing work anyway. This thing's like 45 minutes long. More importantly, Billy Corgan sold it to them? Where in the story does it say that he did that and Dixie didn't? Or are you just assuming that Dixie Carter wouldn't have changed her mind? And not having the TNA video library doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Billy Corgan either, from a business perspective at least, even if he does rebrand. I mean, even if he changes the names, logos, and everything else associated with the company, having a backlog of content can be very useful for showcasing why we should care about the talent on screen, or even if he wants to have his own digital video service. In other words, selling the TNA video library but keeping all the rest of the company's non-physical assets just doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
I did not want this to happen. This is why I did not want Dixie Carter out of power in TNA. This is why I did not want anyone running TNA except Dixie Carter. Dixie Carter sucks in creative. Get a creative wrestling mind in the creative to be there. But do not get anyone else other than Dixie Carter to run TNA. Because they would do some bullshit like this.
I'm sorry, but isn't TNA's chief problem right now a financial one? Oh, and speaking of creative, isn't the reason they're no longer on Spike TV because they breached their contract by having someone in their creative department they were explicitly told to not give creative control? That sounds like a hiring decision, which comes down to the business side and not the creative side. And more importantly, if Dixie Carter is willing to breach a written agreement with their television provider, what's to say she wouldn't breach a verbal promise to the fans if it came down to the brass tacks?
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
I do not want TNA programming. I do not want Vince owning TNA programming. He will not respect TNA's legacy and history. He will only talk about that loser AJ Styles. But to tell you the truth, TNA themselves didn't respect their legacy and history.
Wait, is that why TNA inducted the first Knockouts champion into their Hall of Fame? And considering you later get onto TNA for its Knockouts division becoming more about sex appeal than wrestling, and TNA just a few days before this video came out and put a very skilled female wrestler that worked for the company for years in its Hall of Fame, I'd say they have some respect for their history. More importantly, let's think about what TNA is more likely to talk about heavily on its programming. Are they going to talk about people who are currently working for the company? Or are they going to talk about guys like, say, AJ Styles, who, although integral to the company's history, are more likely to make people want to watch the competition? Same for WWE, actually. First of all, it's not like AJ is the only guy who used to work for TNA that's in WWE right now, as, once again, Samoa Joe, Austin Aries, and Bobby Roode can all be put over with their accomplishments in TNA. More importantly, Sting and Christian, who are both retired, mind you, are easily people whose TNA runs would be brought up on WWE programming. There's other people on the main roster that I could bring up as well, such as, well, actually, he'll be relevant later, but also Xavier Woods as a tag champion in TNA is something WWE would definitely want to put over. So, what? Are you expecting both companies to talk about past events constantly on television programming instead of discussing the current storylines? That's just bad storytelling, man.
They have, I talk about WWE's revolutionist history. Look at their revolutionist history, which I'm going to get to in a minute.
And I'll be there in a minute, but what the fuck is revolutionist history? Does that mean that they'll only focus on the most groundbreaking moments in their history? If so, real history does that too. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, you meant revisionist history. Learn words.
So they're not going to respect what's his name, but more importantly than that, you know why I do not like Vince owning wrestling companies? He makes crappy DVDs like best of series instead of giving us DVD sets of their television shows.
DVD sets of every single Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, which run for 52 episodes a year. So you want to spend all your money then? Alright, let me put this into context. A single DVD disc holds approximately 2 hours of content when it's done in a way that can actually be played on a DVD player. Using WrestleMania 32's DVD as an example, a 4-hour event with lots of special features that takes up 3 discs, so that's about what I would expect for 6 hours of content, which is most likely what's really on the WrestleMania 32 DVD. So let's use the shortest of the shows in question, NXT, as our baseline. The running time is about 50 minutes. This means that there would be about 2 episodes on a single disc. So to release all of NXT for a year, you'd be buying a 26-disc box set. But that's just NXT. If you want SmackDown, which runs about 86 minutes give or take for a single episode, unless you want the episodes broken up between DVDs, you only get 1 episode per DVD with some extra features. So that's a 52-disc box set, or about 40 discs if they actually split up the episodes. And then there's the flagship, which once you remove ads, runs for approximately 144 minutes. That won't even fit on a single DVD, so you're paying at least $300 already for a 52+ disc box set. Of course, Hulu's version cuts out lesser feuds, which would get cut in a best of series anyway, but sure. And the length gets chopped to, are you ready for this? 90 minutes. So about the length of SmackDown when you cut out the commercials. So still at least 40 discs. Besides just the cost to the consumer of buying a massive collection of mostly filler, WWE wouldn't make it because it's a highly niche product for what people are getting and requires a heavy investment that, at the end of the day, isn't worth it. Title screens still have to be designed, covers still have to be made, same with the DVD cases, not to mention something to put all of these DVD cases in to make it worth selling as a collection. You're asking for a supply of a product that is only demanded by those who would not be willing to spend the money in the first place.
DVD sets of their television shows, you can buy bootleg episodes of Nitro on a certain website.
Buy. Bootleg. And if we're talking about Nitro, that's like having 6 years of SmackDown. You know how many discs that would be? 224. There was a remainder, I just rounded it up. Who the fuck is gonna pay for a 224 disc physical set when, according to you, they can just get the individual episodes or moments they want to keep?
Not giving us DVDs and Blu-rays of their events. I used to buy WrestleMania videos, VHSs all the time. I had to stop my collection because they stopped making VHSs, and instead of selling DVDs individually, they put them all in a big stack, and now individually they are hard to find. Glorious! You have to go order them and stuff.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should have let you finish. In that case, glorious! You see where it says free pickup today? That means it's already in the store and that I could go buy it without ordering it, you plebeian.
So when people illegally upload this to YouTube, WWE, since they own the footage, they can go in there and just flag everything. When Linda ran for Senate office, they went in there and flagged not only the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression era stuff, but the New Generation era stuff, the WCW stuff, the ECW stuff, the stuff from the previous stuff. Some of that stuff is made it back on the air. There's still some stuff, but nowhere near as much as it used to be. You have to go out your way, all the way, and go to poor video streaming sites, lower quality video streaming sites to watch this stuff, which has terrible video speed.
You mean to tell me that WWE issued copyright claims on non-transformative re-uploads of things that they own? Oh my god! Never mind the fact that your complaint is kind of already invalidated by the fact that you can still watch them for free, but at lessened quality. Never mind the fact that WWE could shut that down as well. You are literally complaining about a company enforcing their copyright when they have every right to do so. If they take down reviews that use their footage, wrestling with regret, sorry, then you'd have something to complain about. But this? You're literally yelling at the candy shop owner for taking back his candy when you try to run out of the store without paying.
Which have terrible video speed. You have to go out your way to watch this stuff or buy their garbage ass network. I do not want a network, an internet network. I do not want an all-day access to your product. That's what the internet is for.
So, because you can watch WWE's programming illegally, because what you're doing is illegal, WWE service that is actually legal, unlike what you're talking about, is bad. The internet, contrary to belief, does not exist for the purpose of getting around copyright laws and getting things for free that people cannot continue making if they can't make money off of it. Hell, They give you free content anyway. They just don't give you all of it for free. And on top of that, doesn't this go against your idea of the DVD box sets of stuff like Nitro anyway? Why the hell are you going to buy the DVD when you can get it for free if you don't give a shit about whether it's legal or not? Why would you buy WrestleMania DVDs if you can just get it for free from some website? You're not just complaining about the candy shop owner taking away your stolen candy. You're complaining about him wanting money in exchange for it in the first place.
And now TNA programming will be featured on the what's his name? I don't even care about what happens to TNA. I don't care. I don't care what happens. I may watch again in the future because I like the roster of characters, so I may watch again in the future. But I no longer care.
So you like the roster, and you might watch again in the future, but you don't care. In fact, you care so little, you've been ranting about something that supposedly happened to TNA for about 5 minutes now. Or at the very least, you ranted with that as the catalyst for your rant. But please, continue telling me how little you care about TNA.
I no longer care. As of this video, I disown pro wrestling. First, I'm going to bury WWE, then TNA, the Japanese stuff, the indies, and even the English and Lucha Libre stuff. I'm burying everything.
Well, guess I'm gonna have plenty of commentary material based on what I've seen thus far, especially if you're gonna do 2 videos on TNA and the indies.
He's still talking about this video, you know.
Are you fucking kidding me? Wasn't this rant supposed to be about a specific situation? Alright. I have yet to defend pro wrestling as a whole. Let's do it.
First, let's start from Vince McMahon. Every time I go on the internet, I should probably stay off the spoiler websites because every time I go on there, this guy, Vince McMahon, does something to piss me off, man. Everything I hate what this guy, Vince McMahon, Dixie Carter, Billy Corgan, Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, John Cena, AJ Styles, Christians are all cancers to wrestling. Kevin Nash too. All of these guys in some form or another have destroyed professional wrestling, man. Destroyed professional wrestling. Professional wrestling, which used to be fun, sucks because of these assholes.
Are you seriously incapable of staying on topic for like 2 seconds? I thought you were about to tell us why Vince McMahon was bad. Oh, and I like how you say Vince McMahon always does something to piss you off, and then start naming a bunch of other names. As though you're backpedaling because you know it's not all Vince. But I guess I'm gonna have to defend every single one of these guys. Would I have to defend Kevin Nash? Fuck!
Like I said, I've always defended TNA. No more. TNA, your company sucks. It always sucked even when it was good.
It always sucked, even when it was good. Oh, where's Ashton Kutcher? Is the ghost Ashton Kutcher? This is a punk. I'm getting punked, right?
I'm not Ashton Kutcher, you fag.
Well, then surely this guy's a troll. There's no way he can be serious right now.
It always something was garbage. First off, when you were good, first of all, you sold out. You sold out and tried to be like a WWE. Instead of being a wrestling company, you sold out to become a clone of WWE. The wrestlers, and then you then you bury and release and fire the wrestlers, or got them so angry that they left just to push some garbage former WWE stars. With the only former WWE/WCW stars you had here were Kurt Angle, Sting, Jeff Hardy, Dudley Boys, and RVD and Mr. Anderson.
Dude, the gimmick is that he repeats his name once. You can stop. And yes, this is one of those filler interjections, because he hasn't said anything in regards to who got angry enough to leave or got released to push pre-existing WWE talent. He's going to continue naming names of WWE or WCW talent, and whether you think they pushed outsiders too much is honestly a subjective point. But the fact that he does think this is going to bite him in the ass later.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Nash sucks. Nash has sucked since the early 2000s. I don't know why Jeff Jarrett brought him back to wrestling, especially after Scott Hall no-showed and was fired from TNA. I don't see the point of bringing Nash back, the worst drawing champion in history, without the NWO draw. WWE did the same thing. Had that garbage Hell in a Cell match with Triple H. had that garbage Hell in a Cell match with Triple H.
Whether you think the match was bad or not, the storyline did make sense. For one, Kevin Nash had just come back from injury and was getting a crowd reaction, so it made sense to put him in a major feud. The feud started with Nash trying to get two other members of the Clique to be friends again, continuing the long-term story of the Clique. They used the history that was already there as a background for the events of Kevin Nash facing Triple H. Was it the best? No, not at all. But I understood the purpose. There's also the fact that he was still under contract, so they figured they should just use him somehow anyway, but that's beside the point.
He didn't bury or have any form of power, but him being on TV, him taking up TV time alone, probably turned a lot of people off the TNA, and he just being on TV, held other wrestlers back.
So to clarify why this is a dumb statement, to bury someone is to prevent them from moving to a higher position on the card. In other words, he didn't bury anyway, except by simply being there by your logic. And you're gonna say that you talk about power in determining the card, or booking. So let me ask you this. How can you say he didn't have any power when there was as obvious a correlation to ratings decline with his mere presence as you claim? Even if it's because he's in the pocket of the actual creative department, that's still power that Kevin Nash holds.
Yes, before that NWO Wolfpack TV YouTuber comes here, yeah, I'm not Nash. Yeah, he had no power. He had no power like he had in WCW, no booking power. But still, just being on TV, what's his name? Making a mockery of the X Division with that paparazzi thing.
And again, you say he has no booking power, and then point out something he did that requires him to bury an entire division. Even if the booker is the one giving him the power, he still has the power. And on top of that, you think that Kevin Nash having power and burying others for the sake of keeping himself in the main event is a good thing, when that's part of the reason WCW started failing?
Like I said, yeah, then the X Division, I put this over millions of times. This X Division crap was garbage. Just a paint-by-paint ripoff of the Lucha Libre style of wrestling.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that a lot of X Division wrestlers were high flyers, but it's not like that means it's bad. After all, that type of wrestling wasn't seen much in the US at times, so I'd say it'd be able to draw a crowd.
Lucha Libre style wrestling, except even Lucha Libre style of wrestling, overrated, incapable of drawing anyone except hardcore fans, incapable of drawing anyone.
You fucking shit. Okay, I'm just gonna ignore the fact that you said that you yourself have called this good in the past, as, you know, you're allowed to change your mind. I can only say so much about the actual talent from the X Division, since there's a lot of specific guys that will come up. But there's two things that I can say that will bite you in the ass. The first is for later. You're saying something that's similar to Lucha Libre can't attract a crowd? Alright then. The second is for right now. So, the X Division can't draw a crowd, huh? Let me explain why your next statement is garbage then.
What's his name? Yeah, like I said, incapable of drawing anyone. Everyone thinks this was like the greatest thing ever. X Division was awesome because, like I said, not every wrestler. Well, for a while, TNA didn't have besides the tag team, TNA didn't have another mid-card title, and not every X Division wrestler can be world champion. So it gave the other wrestlers on the roster something to do. This was the purpose of having a lightweight division, but this was always overrated. This was always overrated and just a wannabe version of Mexico. Sorry, this is not Mexico. This is America. The promotion is built around the NWA, the heavyweight championship.
Okay, so you see the point of having a light heavyweight division, which is what you are perceiving the X Division to be, even though the X Division title technically doesn't have a weight limit, but it doesn't matter because the company's built around the heavyweight title. So I guess it doesn't have the point you stated it to have then? How can something be awesome and terrible at the same time? And then we get that it's a ripoff of Mexico. I don't remember seeing a lot of masks in the X Division there, buddy. And you're going to talk about Mexican wrestling later, so I'll just save what I have to say for that.
Now, you can have you don't have to be world champion to be popular, but the company is built around the World Heavyweight Championship.
During the rest of this video, you're going to use championships as a measure of someone's ability to be a main eventer. And one more thing about the company being built around the heavyweight title. This is American professional wrestling, not Mexico. No one actually gives a shit about weight divisions.
What's his name, pushing overrated wrestlers like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, and I can understand pushing them, but pretending that they were the best wrestlers in the world. Jeff Jarrett hogging the title.
To push someone is to make someone look good. So you understand making them look good. You just don't understand making them look good. Must have not been making them look that good if Jeff Jarrett was hogging the title though, huh? And by the way, there's credence for calling them among the best in the world. Dave Meltzer is a wrestling journalist whose opinion is considered, well, damn near the opinion in professional wrestling. He runs the Wrestling Observer newsletter, which uses a 5-star system to rate matches. There have been 81 matches since 1983 that have received a coveted 5-star rating, so an average of maybe 2 or 3 a year in all of wrestling. TNA has only had one 5-star match in its entire history. You know what that was? AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and Christopher Daniels in a triple threat match. Why wouldn't they promote the talent that got them their only 5-star rating?
Not pushing the right wrestlers, Monty Brown and Abyss, the two most popular, the two TNA wrestlers to achieve.
Use your words.
Pure TNA wrestlers, homegrown talents to achieve mainstream popularity. The first ones to achieve mainstream popularity, of course, were Sting, Jeff Hardy, and Kurt Angle, and to a lesser degree Christian, but they were already popular from somewhere else.
Bringing up Christian is already popular from somewhere else is going to bite you in the ass later. Let's focus on your statement about Monty Brown and Abyss being the first homegrown TNA wrestlers to have mainstream appeal and not getting pushed. You can argue that Monty Brown didn't get pushed, but remember how you said that you don't have to win the title in order to be popular? That applies here as well. Some guys just don't need the title in order to be considered an important part of the story, and not all stories involve the title. Say what you will about the fact that he couldn't get over at WWE as well, but then we get to Abyss. I'm sorry, but the second person to win TNA's Grand Slam was buried? You could certainly say that he was buried after the Joseph Park storyline, but again, to say he was buried when Jeff Jarrett was around? And again, Abyss doesn't need to be in title matches for his matches to feel important, due to the strength of his character.
Monty Brown should have got the Monty Brown. Instead, you put the title on Christian, who was extremely popular, except he was a mid-carder.
Remember when I said saying Christian was already popular from somewhere else was going to bite you in the ass? It's now biting you in the ass. So, Christian being a mid-carder in WWE, which was the position he was in, lest we forget, means that his position at the top of the card in TNA was one he didn't get because he was popular from somewhere else. If it's because he was already popular, then clearly WWE weren't using him properly, and TNA was right to put the title on him. If he didn't deserve the title to begin with, then being popular from somewhere else cannot be the reason for the push. So you're either wrong 8 seconds ago, or now. Take your pick.
And that probably seeing guys like Christian, AJ, and Joe in the main events probably turned millions of people off the TNA. You got an overrated lightweight X Division wrestler who, an indie star who would be a mid-carder, undercarder, he'll even jobber, but a mid-carder at best, trying to pretend he's the #1 guy in professional wrestling. He's the face of TNA.
Hey, you know what's right below a 5-star match? A 4.75-star match. And AJ Styles has 7 of those, including 2 in TNA. One of those against Samoa Joe. And that's not even getting into most of the accolades from post-TNA Styles. You're fucked. Your brain is literally fucked.
Same with Joe. Now, Joe has some of the things AJ Styles lacks, but here's the problem with Joe. He's fat. And unlike other wrestlers, the late, great Bam Bam Bigelow, Bubba Ray Dudley, he doesn't cover his fat. He comes out there with his lame haircut, his fat gushing everywhere. Who's gonna, even though he was serious, he was a guy you could take seriously, who would take him seriously?
Even though he was a guy you could take seriously, who would take him seriously? fucked.
And once again, when people saw this guy, and then it doesn't matter that he's a legit judo champion and trains avidly in MMA. That's another thing I never liked about Joe. Fake tough guy. One thing I couldn't stand in professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is work. So I couldn't stand these professional wrestlers who do extra training, who go in the ring and train harder, work harder on their wrestling ability, their martial arts, and fighting ability, and continue just to wrestle. Never actually enter any real combat sport like kickboxing, MMA, or boxing, but they do or traditional martial arts like karate and taekwondo, but they do all this extra training. They do all this extra unnecessary training, but never actually test it out in a real fight, in a real combat sport.
Yeah, that's almost like a stuntman or an actor going through martial arts training and never getting into a real fight with it. They just use it to make the illusion of combat they're expected to present more realistic. Do you get how dumb you sound yet? You're literally telling an actor he should stop acting and go fight for real, even if he doesn't want to fight for real, and learn martial arts to help get into the mind of a role he's playing, or understand how the maneuvers should look and feel to make them more realistic. No, better. Remember, kids, if you go to karate class, the only reason you're allowed to do it is so you can beat people up, because martial arts are only good for cage fights and not for self-defense in everyday life.
In a real combat sport. So he a fake tough guy. And then he was a judo champion. He's trained avidly with MMA legend Bas Rutten. You've never seen him using it anywhere. So of course people wouldn't take this guy seriously. You've only seen him in fake wrestling. You've never seen him in a cage, on the street somewhere, in a ring fighting.
Yeah, we've never seen the champion of judo use judo to win a judo match. Do you hear yourself, at all?
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Next is got Christian. TNA from 2002 to 2006 pushed so many awesome wrestlers. Then come 2007, they buried all of those wrestlers to push Christian.
And here's where your point about Christian goes kind of off the rails. See, Christian debuted in TNA in November of 2005, so you're not making his debut as when people were buried. No, you said 2007. The only notable things that happened with Christian in 2007 was that he became NWA champion at the beginning of the year for the second time, and he formed Christian's Coalition, a stable. Since the purpose of a stable is to build up everyone involved, that certainly couldn't be the case. You must be talking about the title victory then. Alright. So everyone who doesn't win a title is being buried? Got it. Remember what you said about not needing titles in order to be popular? Yeah.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Like I said, Jeff Jarrett hogging the title. Huge fan of Jeff Jarrett, but do not like his TNA work. He has some awesome matches and feuds in TNA, but do not like his TNA work.
I may not have liked his work, but his work was amazing. I clearly said two different things just now, can't you tell? Do you have a brain, sir?
Held down so many people, held back and held down so many people, and made so many dumb decisions when he was in TNA, when he was running TNA.
Oh, you didn't like his booking. Yeah, I kind of figured that out. Even though, this really just sounds like whining because you don't like what other people do. Get the fuck over yourself.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Jeff Jarrett's dumb crap. Next is, oh yeah, the phenomenal one. AJ Styles, one of the most overrated wrestlers of all time. The John Cena of TNA, except people actually like him. As AJ Styles, he's a much better wrestler. He's a much better wrestler and much more relatable than Cena is, but still overrated. Little to no charisma, boring as hell, does not appeal to the casual goers, has no appeal to the casual goers.
Is that why the entire crowd flooded the arena and cheers at the Royal Rumble from just seeing the words, "I am phenomenal" on the screen? Is that why his merchandise sold out the second it went on sale? Is that why he's cheered as a face while being marketed as a heel? Congratulations! You have just proved that you don't know jack shit! I'm fucking done! Fuck it! World's a lie! God
not known outside of wrestling, acts like he's a mega star when he's a friggin' indie star.
Even though every single video that WWE uploads that involves AJ Styles gets over 2 million views. Yeah, you do not insult my spirit animal and expect not to get bitch slapped.
A freaking indie star, which usually means mid-carder, which usually means at best mid-carder. Rarely do many indie guys become main eventers.
Except, you know, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, and Steve Austin. Oh, and if we count anyone who was at a lower position on the card before jumping to a different promotion, oh my god, is that a long list? You don't want that list. Your argument is that most indie guys are mid-carders is invalid without me listing examples anyway, since, you know, that's true of most professional wrestlers who make it to WWE at all. Also, most does not mean that AJ Styles is not capable of main eventing. He's proven so in TNA and NJPW.
Doesn't have, like I said, this doesn't appeal to the casual goers. Doesn't appeal to the casual goers. Biggest proof of this is he's had so many characters, and he's been buried and put back in the mid-card several times.
Hey, remember how you said you thought the TNA buried their own stars in favor of stars from elsewhere? Yeah, I'm not needed here. BRB, gonna go on vacation in the Himalayas.
Does this mean he's not gonna finish the commentary?
I'll be back for the next interjection.
Put back in the mid-card several times, and he really didn't have much of a character until his final run in TNA, where he had the lone wolf persona. Places like, people say, well, he was champion in New Japan. So is Yoshitatsu, one of those boring Japanese wrestlers of all time.
Stop! You're done! This is one of the biggest apples to oranges comparisons that I've seen in my entire life. I say that without hyperbole or any form of exaggeration. Now, I'm about to explain to my audience what I mean by this, but perhaps the person who made the video should pay some attention. The championship AJ Styles won was the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, which he's won twice. To give an indication of how much prestige that championship has compared to almost any main title in the United States, main title, remember that, there have only been 27 different IWGP champions in its 29-year history, not counting Kurt Angle's reign in IGF, since that's technically a different championship, and only 6 of those title holders have been non-Japanese wrestlers. Yoshitatsu has also won a championship in NJPW. You know what that title was? The Never Openweight 6-Man Tag Team Championship. He won it as part of a 3-person team. So, you're already comparing a tag team champion to a singles championship. That's already really dumb. But then let's look at the age of the Never Tag title, shall we? It debuted in January of 2016. So you're comparing a title with 29 years of history to a title that has less than 1 year of history. Still really dumb. But then we can look at the division. Never Openweight. That's New Japan's 3rd level division down the card. I cannot think of another professional wrestling company that even has 3 championship divisions that equate to card position, and even if I could, that 3rd division would not have a tag team championship. So your comparison of Yoshitatsu's championship and AJ's is so out of left field that no analogy even exists.
But in mainstream companies like WWE and TNA, he sucks. He's champion now in WWE because WWE has drove away all of the casual goers. You see it with the ratings dropping every year. How the hell do you go from sevens in the Attitude Eras? See, how do you go from 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s? Even one time you got an 8 to going to 2.0s and dropping below the 2.0s and going getting 1 point something. How the hell does that happen?
The same way it happens to the rest of television. I mean, if you look at viewership of almost every show on cable, it's down, save for sports. And yeah, WWE being a live event means that it probably should still be up there. I'll give you that. Even though it's higher than everything else, the margin isn't big enough to explain that. But there's more at play here than just television ratings. WWE should also be looking at their YouTube viewership and how much viewership they get from Hulu, as those are even more important, since the ad revenue from those goes more directly into the company's pocket than the networks. And speaking of the internet, there's also social media interaction. If social media indicates that more people are watching and talking about WWE than anything else, what else can WWE really do in that situation? It means the number of people who buy WWE Network and pay-per-view events goes up, as more people are invested in what's going on. It seems like every critic of current wrestling likes to poke at the television ratings when that's far from the only measure of success nowadays. In fact, with how cable subscription numbers really are, it's probably not a very good estimate at all.
Then you get this with no competition. WCW had no competition. WCW had faced heavy competition from WWE's edgy Attitude Era.
First of all, words. Second of all, the Attitude Era was a response to the competition from WCW's edgier product, not the other way around. And you kind of just explained another part of the problem, actually. The competition meant both brands had to step up their game and tap into the consciousness of the viewing public, which happened to be anti-establishment and edgy, thus the anti-establishment and edgy storylines. That's also not where the public consciousness is right now, though, so those aren't the storylines we're seeing. More importantly, you're comparing an era with primitive internet and no DVR to an era with everyone having internet and DVR being practically required to make a cable package even worth paying for. But, I'm sure you already know that's a contributing factor, right?
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
No stars. Lots of good wrestlers, but no stars. No transcendent stars. Back in the Monday Night Wars, yes, several stars. Same in the Ruthless Aggression era.
So, obviously a transcendent star is someone who crosses over from wrestling into other media, right? That's what I'm getting from your context, and you don't explicitly define that, so if you meant something else, you fail at elaboration. So, first, the idea that someone has to transcend wrestling in order to appeal to a wider audience. No. Some guys, like The Rock, Stone Cold, Edge, and others, choose to do things other than wrestling when they make it big. And some of these guys don't even really leave wrestling behind. Edge is in a bunch of TV shows, but he also has a sketch comedy show on the WWE Network where all the jokes are based on the world of wrestling. Then there's Stone Cold, who does a wrestling podcast for the network. Never mind the fact that it's a small minority of wrestlers that cross into other media anyway, and most of them already had a following in that other media before even getting into wrestling, or got a following from wrestling. It's not even always because of a main event run either. For example, Chyna found quite a career for herself in adult films. Of course, if you want to say a transcendent star means that non-wrestling fans know who they are, you are forgetting that professional wrestling was the mainstream during the Attitude Era. And as much as I enjoyed the Attitude Era, that time is gone. Do people scoff at professional wrestling nowadays? Do you like it? Well, some do, but from my experiences, the majority don't. But does that mean everyone's a fan? No, it doesn't. But a lot of people know who the stars from the Attitude Era were because the stars from the Attitude Era were literally everywhere. It's not the people themselves that make them well known, it's how much exposure they get. But then there's the fact that WWE has no transcendent stars. For one, some of the best examples of guys who worked in other media from the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression era are still working for WWE. John Cena, The Miz, Chris Jericho, Brock Lesnar. And there's guys that have proven that not only do they transcend wrestling, they do so outside of traditional media. Xavier Woods is a highly successful gaming YouTuber, Zack Ryder basically launched the WWE YouTube channel, and Jericho is expanding his reach with his own podcast, if we're going to count Stone Cold for his. But then let's go back to those who choose to move into other avenues. There's a reason there's fewer of those guys around, and it serves to show that WWE shouldn't want people that aren't passionate about the wrestling business. Stone Cold, The Rock, Chris Jericho, all at one point decided to leave and pursue their other interests. While sure, Stone Cold's career was basically cut short by injury, so you can't blame him, Chris Jericho, and essentially The Rock, didn't have that problem. The issue with having guys who could just move on to something that pays more and is less risky is, well, more of them are likely to take what pays more and is less risky.
So, yeah, he's champion now because WWE needs TNA to even make money. They need TNA in the indies to make money. All you have is the hardcore the hardcore WWE fans who will watch them no matter what, and the sheep, and of course finally the hardcore indie fans who want to see who are watching WWE because their favorite indie stars are being featured there.
You heard it here first, folks. The only fans that WWE has are every type of fan that exists. Either people who like WWE or people who like the wrestlers in WWE. What the fuck else are they supposed to be a fan of?
No casual goers. And if you do have a casual goer, they would only be around for stuff like Royal Rumble and WrestleMania.
Or SummerSlam. Or Survivor Series. Or maybe they just catch up on what's going on YouTube and ignore it when there's nothing that interests them. Which is actually a lot easier to do now than it used to be. I'll save some of that for my final thoughts.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
They're like around every week. Like I said, wrestling, it ain't a good time. What culture? I like you guys, but no, you're wrong. It ain't a good time to be a wrestling fan.
Because non-wrestling fans exist.
Worst era of wrestling ever. It's going to get worse and worse. It's going to stay the same as it was. It's going to stay the same as it was. There will be no boom. The only reason you had a boom in the 90s was because MMA wasn't popular yet.
Anybody want to tell him that UFC Fight Night's ratings are lower than WWE's Raw and SmackDown ratings? Just me? Alright then.
MMA wasn't popular yet. Now that you got to see real fighting like MMA, who would go back and watch some scripted ass wrestling? Doesn't matter how real or badass you make it, it's still scripted.
Oh, this will definitely bite you in the ass later. For that matter, why would anyone want to watch an action movie after watching MMA? I mean, it doesn't matter how real or badass you make it, it's still scripted. Your argument falls flat on its face when you realize that scripted content is the majority of media!
Still scripted. People, idiots watching WWE, supporting everything they do, defending everything they do, supporting this trash wrestling, thinking we're going to get another attitude era, another wrestling boom. There will be no wrestling boom. Wrestling will continue as it is and probably eventually just disappear and become even lower than what it was.
It's funny you think people defend everything WWE does. I don't even defend everything WWE does. For example, why the fuck all the squash matches on Raw lately? Why is Raw still 3 hours long? Why are you changing the entire fucking ring for the Cruiserweight division? Why are you still pushing Roman Reigns?
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
But the main reason I hate AJ Styles, well, like I said, I now hate TNA, but back when I was a supporter of TNA, when AJ Styles left TNA, he left on a bitter note. First off, when he was champion, TNA, they had several storylines they had several storylines centered around him. They even tried to give him a title, but no, this motherfucker tried to be like CM Punk and leave with the belt. When TNA approached him to resign, he tried to hold off because he thought he was this free agent and was going to quickly get into WWE.
So the CM Punk angle where he left with the title, yeah, that was fake. Mostly. See, CM Punk did actually have contract negotiations with WWE at the time, so they turned the public fact that Champion was negotiating his contract into a storyline. Of course, they only made it a storyline after Punk re-signed with the company. In other words, they knew Punk was staying, going into Money in the Bank, and they were using the fact the general public didn't know to generate publicity. Now, it's true that AJ Styles was actually under contract negotiation. But remember how you pointed out TNA management continuing to support outside talent over homegrown stars? Couldn't that have been a catalyst for AJ wanting to leave TNA? There's a link in the description to an article with video that indicates AJ's thoughts on leaving both TNA and NJPW. And in that interview, AJ states that the opportunity at NJPW made leaving TNA easier. Not the thought of going to WWE, but the idea of getting to go to New Japan. But then there's a piece of information that shows you that WWE wasn't interested in AJ solely out of necessity. In the interview, AJ reveals that WWE previously showed interest in signing him in 2002, when he was starting in TNA. Why the fuck would they express interest in someone who wasn't even a star yet, and then pursue him again when the opportunity arises? I can't think of a reason. What the fuck?
Yeah, that didn't happen. It's happening now because WWE needs fans like AJ Styles. I like how these TNA wrestlers a couple of years ago weren't good enough. Now they are because you drove away the casual audience that you need these guys. Nobody wants to see guys like Roman Reigns, John Cena, or any of these big wrestlers you have. Nobody cares about these wrestlers.
I would once again like to direct you to the fact that WWE approached AJ 14 years ago. But sure, nobody wants to see John Cena or Roman Reigns. As in, the hardcore fans don't want to see John Cena or Roman Reigns. Hell, the casual fans don't even want Roman, but let's talk about the guy the casual fans do want to see. And you know what match the casual fans paid big money to see twice? John Cena versus AJ Styles. And since John Cena, along with The Miz, is one of the guys who makes the most non-wrestling appearances on talk shows, award shows, and even commercials, that means that as a star, he's transcended wrestling, whether anybody likes his in-ring work or not.
So you gotta sign these indie guys. They've always had indie guys, but they never went after the top indie guys. It was usually a guy who was only on the independent circuit for like a short time, then quickly went to WWE. But no, they've got guys who spent years on the indies in WWE now.
Guys who were only in the indies for a few years and then got approached by WWE? You mean like AJ Styles in 2002? God, I am beating that point to death, aren't I? As far as only now going after guys that have been on the independent circuit for years, do I need to remind you of Steve Austin and Brian Pillman's pre-WWE history? Hell, Hulk Hogan was told he couldn't hold the title in AWA before going to WWF. Bret Hart and Stampede Wrestling, Edge, Jeff and Matt Hardy. I've already proven you wrong. I could go on if you want. Come on, tough guy! I could go another 20!
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
New Japan and Japanese wrestling in this day and age. Back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the 2000s, New Japan was awesome. But in more recent times, they have been terrible. I was watching, first off, let's talk about their garbage-ass streaming service and television shows. First off, they have a garbage network similar to WWE. Instead of establishing a channel where you upload shows to that channel, or trying to get on actual TV, or actual pay-per-view here in America, no, they're featured on a streaming service. And then guess what this show is? This New Japan Wrestling is a tape show with JR featuring past matches from past shows, featuring matches from previous shows. Who the hell would want to watch that? How would this get a following? This is worse than WWE. At least you get live matches on WWE television. Matches actually as they're actually happening. You get tape shows and matches, and Raw and SmackDown are live now.
You know, it's not like every single promotion outside of WWE has their television, if they even have television, pre-recorded and aired after the fact. And about what they have in the United States, yeah, are you aware of what a secondary market is? Because that's what the US is to New Japan. And they know that they're appealing to the hardcore fans with a streaming service and a TV show that utilizes pre-taped matches. It's almost like they know that Japanese wrestling would be a niche product in America, so they're giving those niche fans what they want instead of spending millions of dollars to appeal to a mainstream audience they aren't going to appeal to.
New Japan features matches from previous promotions on the house shows. I was watching a New Japan show. It looked like an episode of Impact. It looked like a TNA, Orlando, Florida, Impact Zone type show.
House shows. You are complaining about house shows, which are not intended to be televised, not having as much production value as matches that are intended to be televised. Fucked!
I usually watch New Japan for the big-time arenas. They have the big-time arenas when they have their special pay-per-views and shows like Tokyo Dome, Wrestle Kingdom shows, which are good. But their television shows stink. Their television shows suck.
You do know that WWE uses a much smaller arena for weekly television than they use for pay-per-views, right? Hell, they normally don't do an arena with over 50,000 capacity for anything other than really large pay-per-views like WrestleMania or SummerSlam. Oh, and this is the most important thing of all. Who the fuck cares how big the arena is? All that should actually matter to you is how good the actual show is. So, by your logic, UFC is terrible then, since UFC 203, you know, one of their largest events of the year, was held in an arena where the maximum capacity is just over 20,000. I mean, after all, it's not the Tokyo Dome with a maximum capacity of 55,000, so it's a shit arena, right? That's enough to base the entire quality of your product on.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Like I said, they have a couple of wrestlers I like, but their overall shows just suck. They suck. They're actually in some ways worse than WWE. The only reason WWE will probably still be considered worse is because WWE, nothing is good. Storyline's terrible, wrestling is terrible, no characters, no stars, no nothing. But at least WWE has better shows than New Japan. Has better TV shows than New Japan. New Japan also has better pay-per-views, so this is why WWE would still be the worst. But New Japan ain't far from behind. And the other Japanese promotions, Noah, All Japan Pro Wrestling, all these shells of their former selves, man. It's just shells of their former selves.
Wait, so what exactly do you not like other than the production value? Would you like to elaborate, or are you just going to sit on your ass and repeat yourself again?
I was watching a match from earlier this year between Chris Hero and Marufuji, and match was awesome. The attendance was poor in comparison to when I watched Noah from years ago when Kenta, Daniel Bryan and them were there.
So the match was great, but there weren't people there. Wouldn't that be an indication that more people should be going to see this type of thing, rather than that the product is bad? Hell, based on what you're saying, Japanese wrestling would be better off if you spoke Japanese and could tell people about the good matches. Now, I'm going to be doing a bit of skipping, but there's something he says I want to play first.
There are a couple of wrestlers there I like Will Ospreay, Ricochet, Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and many more, but that promotion is just terrible and a shell of what it once was.
Two reasons I played that. One, to show people I wasn't kidding when I said his only complaint was crowd attendance and production value, which, again, isn't really an issue when it comes down to whether wrestling is good or not. The second, the names Will Ospreay and Ricochet are going to bite him in the ass later. There's a few people who already know where I'm going with this, so just stick with me here.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Next, let's talk about my favorite promotions. The independent circuit. That's the American, European, and Canadian independent circuit. Let's start with the American independent circuit. The American independent circuit has resources. While they don't have the arenas or the money that the previous territory promotions had back in the day, they have resources and TV and internet exposure and stuff. Those promotions never had. Yet they'll never be anything more than what they are. Yeah, WWE has a monopoly, but you should still find a way to get bigger.
So, if you're nationally and globally recognized, are producing high-quality product that you're proud of, and have millions of fans that will sell out all your shows, you're not an arena with 55,000 people every night. You're trash! Once again, why does any of this matter? Sure, it'd be nice if places like PWG and ROH were bigger, although you go on to talk about ROH in a few moments. But does that actually detract from what they produce? No, it doesn't. In the case of ROH, they already hold events all over the world, and many of these promotions display respect for each other by not stepping on each other's toes, which drives competition of telling the most compelling stories and signing the most talented workers to your promotion, which is why the independent scene is still alive. They aren't trying to eat each other, so they can all grow.
But they'll never be anything other than what they are. They're much better. They're way better than WWE. They're probably some of the best wrestling promotions around. But they're gonna be nothing in years, and all their wrestlers will just end up wasting their careers in WWE or be forever made in obscurity.
Well, I mean, based on the fact that WWE signs guys that have been on the independent circuit for years, I'd say the former rather than the latter. Your problem with the indies is literally that the other places aren't that good. Just watch the indies then, dumbass!
Next is the European wrestling promotions. There's a revival in British wrestling, but it's only in Britain, and those guys really aren't that famous as much as I thought they were. Most of those guys really aren't all that famous. British wrestling was at its best back in, believe it or not, British wrestling hasn't been anything since the 80s. There's been a revival in the 90s with guys like Alex Shane, Rockstar Spud in them, but nothing compared to what it was in its heyday, which was pretty much the 30s all the way through the 80s.
And that's all he says about British wrestling. Hey, who was the very first name you brought up as someone you liked in NJPW again? What was his name? Will Ospreay? Yeah, isn't he British? On top of that, you mentioned What Culture earlier, so You're just not going to bring up WCPW, their promotion? Oh, wait, that's right. The biggest arena they've been in is the London O2, which has a capacity of 20,000. Not the Tokyo Dome! Bad show! Bad show!
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Then you got the Lucha Libre promotions. Both CMLL and AAA are good. CMLL, they're good, but their show once they were, I think they've been their shows are still good, but CMLL, they're the best wrestling, but nobody talks about them. Nobody talks about them. It's all about the AAA promotion. Nobody talks about them anymore. When they used to be, when they're the largest, and actually not only they're the largest, but not only they're one of the largest promotions in the world, they're one of the oldest promotions. They're still the oldest promotion in existence. It's been around since the 30s.
I'm sorry, but is this against wrestling or its fans? So many of your points have been in no way the fault of the promotion. The arena's too small, not enough people are going, no one talks about them, and people don't talk about CMLL for the reason you're about to go into. AAA has an American presence, whereas CMLL does not.
Since the 30s. Despite that, they're not anything big. Huge in Mexico and everywhere else. Nothing here in the United States. Next, AAA promotion. They're huge in Mexico and probably the biggest promotion in Mexico. However, in more recent times, while they have great wrestling, they focus more on spots and highly choreographed fights over technical wrestling.
So remember when I said that Will Ospreay and Ricochet were going to bite you in the ass? Yeah, we're doing that now. This past year, during the Best of the Super Juniors tournament in New Japan, they had a match between Will Ospreay and Ricochet. I'm going to guess that you saw that match since those names came to mind first. Now, there were a lot of people who complained about that match for a couple of reasons. Now, one of those complaints is going to come up later, but here's the first complaint. Lots of highly choreographed spots. Again, you're listing Will Ospreay, whose nickname is the Aerial Assassin, and Ricochet, a guy who literally wrestles under a mask for the company you're saying focuses too much on highly choreographed spots, as two of your favorite wrestlers.
Next, they got so big that they were able to fund a wrestling show here instead of creating another Lucha Libre USA type promotion. No, they create Lucha Underground. I praised Lucha Underground in the past. Lucha Underground is fucking garbage. I tried to watch that season 3 earlier today. Didn't care. Shut the television off. I don't care about the story. I don't care about the storylines and all this unrealistic comic book shit. This television, Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff. If I want to watch a comic book of wrestling, if I want to read a comic book of wrestling, I would go read the Stone Cold Undertaker comic books back in the Attitude Era. I would go read the Japanese Muscle Man, Kinnikuman, Ultimate Muscle, kind of watch that cartoon. I would watch the 1995 martial arts film Super Fight Zone, or the movie No Holds Bars, or the comedy WCW Ready to Run. If I want to watch a film about, if I want to watch a television film version of professional wrestling, I want a comic book version of professional wrestling. I just want wrestling. I want fighting and characters. And some storyline behind it. This gift of the gods and all this temple, Dario Corto, garbage. I don't care. I like the wrestlers, most of the wrestlers, but I do not care for these garbage ass fantasy like storylines.
So I'm not going to get on to you for not liking Lucha Underground. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. You want a more grounded wrestling promotion. That's perfectly fine. But you say this after asking why anybody would want to watch professional wrestling when they could watch real fighting with MMA. And you don't see how this has more of the escapist elements that can separate pro wrestling from MMA? On top of that, stuff like Gift of the Gods and the Temple are really just framing devices. The Temple is just an old temple that they hold the shows in, and the Gift of the Gods Championship is basically just Money in the Bank type of thing where you get a shot at the title whenever you want. Dario Cueto, at the end of the day, is just an authority figure, really the general manager. If you really put what Lucha Underground is into perspective, it's just really good wrestling with a flashy coat of paint. And like I said, all good if that coat of paint blinds your eyes, but it was there from the beginning, so to say that you don't like it now is kind of, well, stupid.
Lucha Underground is trash, and then despite this promotion, this product, while hugely popular on the internet, once again, has not brought in any casual goers and will not attract any casual goers. Hell, people will probably hate this even more than WWE because of how ridiculous it is.
And this is the part where I actually do get to judge you for your opinion. So, you mean to tell me that no casual goer, who typically watches wrestling for the storylines rather than the wrestling itself, mind you, will watch something with a more cinematic approach to storytelling and minor fantasy elements in the background? And again, this is because you, as a hardcore fan, do not like this more cinematic storytelling and just want fighting. Get the fuck off your high horse, sir. People kill themselves when they fall from there.
Oh, by the way, casual fans use the internet too. Just an FYI.
You're on Elway Network. Last time I checked, you still have money problems. Like I said, you ain't doing nothing.
So I'm guessing them being on El Rey Network is supposed to mean it's bad. I have no idea. It could just be something you're saying to show that they should be making money for all I know. But let's go with the former. Take a look at the executive producer credit on Lucha Underground. That's Robert Rodriguez, the owner of El Rey. This is his show, dumbass! And have you never seen a Robert Rodriguez movie? They use storytelling elements similar to what one would see on Lucha Underground. It's literally a Robert Rodriguez-styled Lucha Libre show, and that's exactly what I'm expecting when I watch it. You think a casual fan is gonna hop on the El Rey Network to watch traditional Lucha Libre? I think not. As far as the financial issues go, I've got another link in the description for you. It states that the financial troubles that Lucha Underground is experiencing are because Unimas didn't air the second season in Spanish, like they did with the first, even though the first drew in large numbers. It's entirely possible they've adjusted their budget for this now, but the point is that if you're saying this is a reason the show is bad, it's not even Lucha Underground's fault.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Which brings to my next one. I forgot about Ring of Honor. Oh yes, Ring of Honor. The most overrated independent promotion of all time. Ring of Honor. Awesome product with awesome characters. However, they have garbage ass wrestling. Even though they make wrestling the most important thing, garbage, spot fest, garbage. Not all matches are like this, but they have a lot of matches like this with lots of spots, no selling, wannabe pro-resume.
Well, we already know you brought up one of the two major complaints about Will Ospreay versus Ricochet's Best Super Juniors match. Now here comes the other one. This is a complaint that even some people who liked the match had, and it was that they didn't sell enough. In other words, the complaints about Will Ospreay versus Ricochet, which is between the first two guys you thought of when you thought of New Japan wrestlers, by the way, are the same complaints you make about ROH. There's plenty more to complain about with ROH though, so by all means, bring something up.
In their 16-year existence, having done anything, companies like WCW and ECW did more in their 12 to 11 year existence than Ring of Honor has done in its 12-year existence. Even TNA has done more than Ring of Honor, even though TNA is in worse shape now.
Wait, so in order to say that ROH, who you admit is an independent promotion, you compare them to three promotions that you know were operating on a national level. Well, I suppose you could make an argument for ECW, but Samoa Joe, Austin Aries, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Tyler Black, Eddie Edwards, and Kevin Steen all won either a WWE or TNA World, or in Kevin's case, Universal, Championship after winning the ROH World Championships. And that's just counting the ones that held the ROH title. Lest we forget your least favorite champion before he went to TNA.
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
Next is oh yes, fine. That's every promotion. That's every promotion. The final one is the one I hate the most. The WWE.
You mean the one you already talked about? I'm skipping this if you just repeat yourself.
Attitude Era was over with. Attitude Era was over with.
That's what I've been trying to tell you!
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
As much as I like them, as much as I love them bringing in Hogan, because he actually made me watch TNA after I stopped watching TNA for a while, bringing in Hogan and making all those changes, bringing all those changes, it took all the way up until MVP came to finally get your product back to what it was. It got a little bit better in late 2010, 2011, but it wasn't until about 2014 we finally got the company back to where it's supposed to be, at least on screen, pushing wrestlers who actually want to be there, pretending guys like AJ Styles and Joe, allowing these guys to pretend they were bigger than the company when they really weren't.
And remember, AJ got buried in the mid-card multiple times, and TNA repeatedly pushed established names from elsewhere over homegrown stars. But nah, Styles didn't quit because he felt like he was being mistreated. He quit because he thought he was bigger than the company. And in 2014, they started pushing guys who wanted to be there instead of Joe, who was in the middle of a main event run. Are you high?
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
I criticize WWE not respecting the legacy of previous companies. TNA hasn't either. You see all the promos of guys like, you see them hyping guys like AJ Styles, Daniels, Joe, Christian, Kurt Angle, Sting, Jeff Hardy, RVD, Team 3 of those people. But you never see the guys who made TNA with the other guys. AMW, Chris Harris and James Storm. The Naturals, Andy Stevens and Chief Stevens and Andy Douglas, the Naturals. 3 Live Crew, Conan, Ron the Truth Killings and Road Dogg, Sonny Siaki and the Jorge Estrada and Jimmy Yang, the Flying Elvises, Apollo.
Okay, I was watching TNA at the time, and I forgot half of these guys existed. Like, seriously, they're gonna run promos for the Flying Elvises! And for guys that aren't currently in WWE. The only people who did anything significant in TNA among the ones you listed were 3 Live Crew and AMW. And more importantly, when are TNA airing these promo packages for people that no longer work for them?
Why don't you off back up a mountain, please?
WWE is possibly the worst promotion around, and unfortunately, it's the biggest. It's the biggest promotion around. It's one thing to be the biggest, but you're the worst. This crappy promotion has a hold on professional wrestling. Whenever you see a good independent promotion, another promotion that represents professional wrestling the way it should be, when professional wrestling, Vince McMahon made professional wrestling a dirty word with his crappy sports entertainment garbage.
Which is no longer a relevant complaint. Seriously, enough with this whole thing about the terminology sports entertainment. Wrestling means the actual technical ability in the ring in WWE now, and it's a word that's used fairly frequently in WWE nowadays. Just because they treat the overall product as more than wrestling, which is how they got as big as they did in case you forgot, doesn't mean that professional wrestling is now a dirty word in WWE. There was a point where it was. That point was stupid. It's done and over with.
Like I said, remember when you saw my videos, whenever I buried WWE, I not only buried them for what they've done now, but what they've done in the past 30 years, ever since that loser, Vince McMahon Jr. took over with these garbage-ass characters, these lame-ass comic book characters. It was never about wrestling with that guy. Always about Saturday morning, lame-ass cartoony comic books. Lucha Libre has you beat with combining wrestling with comic book characters. Horrible, fake, choreographed matches over pure technical wrestling.
Will Ospreay versus Ricochet. Yeah, see, that's the thing about professional wrestling. It has room for both of those things. At this point, I'm really just biding my time for final thoughts and wondering if this commentary is going to wind up lasting an hour. Hi, Editor Boon here. Something I forgot to mention. Didn't you earlier say that you'd rather read the Stone Cold and Undertaker comic books from the 90s than watch Lucha Underground, which intentionally uses comic book storytelling elements, according to you? According to you. So, Lucha Libre has them beat, but you'd rather read the WWE comics anyway. So you'd rather read the inferior comic book. Yeah.
Partially responsible for just about every death in wrestling. Every death in wrestling.
Okay. This is actually the only reason I was letting him keep going. Partially responsible for every death in professional wrestling. Alright then, let's start with people who actually did work for him. Umaga refused to go to rehab and wound up fired. How the fuck is that Vince's responsibility? The reason the wellness policy calls for him to go to rehab is to try to prevent someone from going down a path of self-destruction, which is precisely what happened to Umaga, who refused WWE's help. Roddy Piper, diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma 8 years before his death. Yeah, no. Randy Savage died 17 years after last working for WWE of a heart condition that he didn't know about while mixing painkillers and alcohol. Right, that's totally Vince's responsibility. Dusty Rhodes, stomach cancer. What, do you think Vince is literally injecting cancer into people? Chris Candido died from pneumonia at a TNA show. Fuck, the original story was that he died from a blood clot after surgery from an injury he got at that event. So you're still wrong even then. So even if we assume those that died because of professional wrestling, in the case of Chris Candido, you're still wrong. And that removes people like Mitsuharu Misawa, Bruiser Brody, or John Kronus, I could go on, that all died while Vince McMahon ran WWF or WWE without ever working for him. In conclusion, saying Vince McMahon is partially responsible for even nearly every death in professional wrestling is asinine. You spent a lot of this video talking about everything being a shell of its former self, and I do mean literally everything that has a history, which gives me a good indicator of what kind of professional wrestling fan you really are. You are just another one of those guys that wants everything to be like it used to be, but you're far worse. At least those guys can pick a damn era to go back to. You want the Attitude Era's ratings, the wrestling style of the early 80s, the storytelling ideas of the Ruthless Aggression era, and you want the Japanese product to be in the latter part of the 2000s. There's a reason that those things happened at those different times, though, because the crowds were different and because what people could do was different. You call a show with good wrestling shit because of its production value, and then you call a show with good storylines and production value shit for using the same wrestling style. You, sir? You don't know what you want other than to have something to complain about. Look, I know how professional wrestling is. You love it so much that you hate it. But you're taking that to a whole different level. So here's my advice. If you like what you see from New Japan's matches, great. Fuck what the crowd looks like, it doesn't matter. If you like independent wrestling, great. Fuck whether they can get to some higher echelon or not, it doesn't matter. You'll have a lot easier of a time enjoying the thing if you don't focus on things that, at the end of the day, don't really matter that much to the thing. The only thing you need to ask yourself is, do you like the characters? Do you like the storylines? Do you like the in-ring action? If all of those are yeses, then nothing else is important enough to dwell on. I'm not saying you can't want New Japan to have bigger crowds or for PWG to grow into a more formidable company, but don't say the company's shit because it doesn't have those things. Wait, what?
Huh. Guess that video was a bit long for his liking.
Aw, poor guy.
Well, either way, you stopped the incredibly easy to defeat Ghost from... Actually, now that I think about it, I don't know what the fuck he was gonna do.
All I know is that he can lock doors. I think I see a building down that way.
Must be where the city is, which means people you can recruit to fight Satan. So get your ass going before I knock you out again.
Jeez, when did you become such a jerk?
Implying I wasn't at some point.